How's everyone doing? Wow, what an amazing group of artists here today. I wanted to start by recognizing all of the unseen waterways that are underneath the floor of this building. The ones that have been buried, the ones that have been forgotten, the ones whose names I don't know. I want to acknowledge the network of villages that stood here not so very long ago as part of a network of Tongva villages that would have been happily participating in the abundance of the marshlands that were part of Bologna Creek and the LA, what we now call the LA River watershed. And I would like to also say what a privilege it is to be a guest on Tongva Gabrielino land and how much I've learned in this 20-year cycle of work that I call the metabolic cycle. Thank you. Okay, is it the green button? So I'll tell you a little bit about what I'm going to present today. I'm going to present 3 projects. I'm going to present Not a Cornfield, which started the metabolic cycle of work in the spring of 2005, 20 years ago. I'm going to discuss my ongoing effort to connect that space, that relic of the floodplain of the LA River, which is 2.5 miles away from here, to the LA River, a project called Bending the River. And then I'm going to talk about Moving Mountains, which is a relatively new work that investigates the logic of the generative principle of this biome, which is that we're living in a place where landslides and floods are normal, and they bring about the abundance that is required to live here. And what do we do when we defend ourselves against landslides and floods? To kind of think about ways to strategize where do we go from here. But to begin with, I wanted to call out the mission statement of Metabolic Studio that comes from Sherry Rabinowitz and Kit Galloway's Electronic Cafe. Artists need to create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy. So this neon sits on top of Metabolic Studio, and I'm going to start by a film that talks a bit about the scale of the work that we're doing between the Salton Sea, which you saw there, the LA River, which you see here, and here's Moving Mountains, which is the first amount of landslide debris that we've been able to move from Topanga to the LA State Historic Park.
Slowly, spasmodically, pools form. The pressure of water held, bursting, rushing, moving pollen, seeds, bacteria, into plant fences of mycelium that line the invisible gardens along flowing under the concrete of the LA River, waiting and intending the possibilities of germination.
This is a city that has forgotten its own water. But beneath the concrete, the floodplain waits. Beneath the burn scars, seeds crack open. Beneath the the streets, the aquifers whisper, and we're listening too. The Great American Bison is really what began the Metabolic Studios cycle. I found them also on Catalina Island and was able to send them back home to the Rosebud Reservation. It really helped me understand when we talk about reparation, what a small part of the pie we really think about. In this diagram, the red dot represents what we're currently taking on when we talk in LA about reparation, which mostly has to do with housing. The green part would represent something much, much larger. Metaphorically linking it here to the bison, it represents the forest commons that surround Southern California. It is that commons of the forests where these repetitive fires that we're getting and will continue to get will continue to create a context, a cultural context of suffocation if we don't get them into check. And it's that ochre band that the climate resilience petition is looking at. And that is the human-forest interface and how we're encroaching upon it and how we need to dig deep into traditional ecological knowledge and center the indigenous knowledge where people knew how to live carefully and quietly in kinship with their surroundings. For my effort, what I've done in order to try and think to scale is think about how to do the obvious, which is to reconnect the floodplain of the LA River with the water that should normally flow to it. The scale of that has included getting more than 108 networked permits to redirect the flow, a small part of the flow of the LA River to a singular park. So in 2005, this is what the space that is today called the LA State Historic Park looked like. It was an abandoned train yard, which is an interesting part of the story of the bison. I don't know how many people know this, but when we eradicated the Great American Bison from the grasslands that separate the Mississippi River watershed from the Colorado River watershed in the Great Basin, we used the trails that the bison used to walk on. It was their heavy weight, and they would move among the foothills of the mountains that created paths that when we built the railways, we built them on. So this railway yard built for Pacific Rail back in the 1870s was built in order to ship silver mined in California back to the East Coast. Records show that this was the farthest western point that the Great American Bison traveled. So later I learned from Grandpa Royce Stone that when I sent the bison back to the Rosebud Reservation, he sent me the vision of a cornfield here. So here's a picture of historically the site we call the LA State Historic Park on the left when it was Pacific Rail, and on the right, after planting about 1 million corn seeds to suck the toxicity that was left behind by the train yard, what began this cycle of work. That and learning from people how to hold space for that ritual and that intention of regeneration. So in order to get that corn to grow, I used to hire a water truck and go down to the LA River and fill it up with water and then drive it over to the LA State Historic Park to connect it to hundreds of miles of irrigation stripping that we laid on the park. It was only when the corn began to really peak out of the cornfield that the LADWP followed me down there and asked me what I was doing. And I explained I needed water to irrigate the cornfield, and they explained that that was illegal. And I said, well, isn't this water that has been thrown away by the city? And they said, yes, but it's dirty, and if you connect it to an irrigation system and somebody gets sick, they're going to sue the city for damages. So you can start to see how the issues of liability prevent the obvious from happening. So I thought, wouldn't it be good and wouldn't it be right if we could reconnect these two spaces again? And so I thought it would be kind of an obvious thing to do to just get the water that's moving right outside of Metabolic Studio there to the LA State Historic Park, not realizing that the LA River above the concrete belongs to the US Army Corps of Engineers. Below the concrete is invigilated by the city of LA, and it's bracketed on both sides by private railway and by all kinds of other, regulatory processes. And that's before you get into conversation to ask permission of the First Nations people whose land this is. But after finally getting all of those regulatory agencies involved, we were able to lift the first piece of concrete out from the LA River. And what did we discover? That there's a river underneath the river. And that river is untouched by 100 years of industry. It's pure, it's clean, it's healthy, and buried underneath that concrete is the original land of LA, the floodplain. So we brought that floodplain material out from under the LA River and put it on top of an unpaved parking lot on the other side of the river from the studio. And within months, plants just came right back out of the floodplain material, even having been buried for more than 100 years. This is the power of the revolution that we need to usher in. It's the kinship that we need to have with the humbleness of how the soil in Southern California looks like. In a normal construction process, this would all go again to the dump. This is a collage of what the 300 feet of vitrified clay pipe that we put under the concrete to redirect the flow looks like. So that amount of pipe, that tiny sliver in that sea of concrete, yielded, when we removed the floodplain, an acre of a native garden on an old parking lot. And that is a tiny fraction of what the scale of the LA River is. What if we were able to make more cuts like this? What if we were able to retrieve the primary ground that's been buried beneath the concrete? Would we understand it? Would we know how to connect to it? How do we reconnect with the epistemological presencing of wonder, of kinship, of all of these narratives, these stories, these songs that have been repressed and suppressed for all of this time? Similarly, more on the area of the conversation of debris, here you have, besides floods that would normally move this floodplain material everywhere in the city, you have landslides. This was last spring's landslide in Topanga Canyon, where my partner Rich and I live. And this landslide blocked our road for about 3 months, and that's Route 27. And at some point I woke up and I said, oh my God, after all of this study of ecology, I've learned over and over again that biodiversity is engendered by disturbance in ecology. So here we have a landslide, which is the generative principle of the ecological rebound, and all I'm thinking about is how soon I can drive my car down Route 27. Not where is this landslide going to? Full of native plants, full of wonder. So I took some tea and cookies down a back road to the construction workers, and we had to talk about it, and they realized that if we could take this soil someplace for free and save them $100 per truckload to take it to a dump, that we had a deal. So they said I had till Friday to figure it out. Kelly Majewski, who's here in the audience today, made a whole lot of phone calls together with me, and we found that we could put it on one of our sites and on the 4-acre laydown yard at the LA State Historic Park, where the LA River will meet the park soon enough. So we brought it down, and again, within months, plants started coming out of that floodplain material. Here are some of the wonders that have come up. On the right, you have a laurel sumac tree. What that suggests is that if we really want to take breathing as an aspect of citizenship into our hands, then salvaging landslide debris and moving it to places where there's no forests will work. So we don't need to actually buy trees. We can just move landslide debris to parking lots and unpave them, and you will get this template. And you'll also get, miraculously, amaranth. Amaranth and sunflowers are just incredibly successful at rebounding. Here is an amaranth on the top of what we call the Mother Mound, on top of Vertelli's tow yard parking lot, with a visitor from Guatemala, from Quacha Alum, paying her respects to this giant beauty. And no sooner that we move the landslide and the floodplain in, but an injured kayak also moves in to heal herself. And so what we can see is that kinship that's all around us all the time when we open our eyes to it. And this is the outfit that is making this all happen. This is Kristen Flores, again, a wonderful name. She's in charge of flow engineers, and she is responsible for moving all of the landslide debris from the fires currently to places where that land can be purposed. And we've been working with her since last spring. Now, it's important to realize that the landslide that happened in Topanga last time happened again because of fires, right? So the fires and landslides are something that we need to be thinking about in a new kind of way. We need to be thinking strategically, not just about the formal aspects of what we make, but about the systemic approaches to how we source our materials and how we advocate for novel protocols for governments to practice. And this will segue into the climate resilience work that Patrice and I are doing together with Marcos Aguilar and Gabriela Crow and others joining our coalition. Patrice also shares a deep affection and spends a lot of her time in Topanga. It's in many ways been a teacher to both of us. But we also recognize that the protocol to move all of this material to a dump during a time where so many people are in a state where they don't know if the air is clean for them to breathe, is how do we bring this together? So the climate resilience petition started by holding our electeds accountable for new protocols in how we deal with things like landslides, right? Because there's 5,000 truckloads of soil that needs to go somewhere right now, and if each one costs $100 to take to a dump, that's $500,000 of really clean virgin soil going to be thrown away when you've got miles and miles of homes that have been burnt and a federal government that says it won't do any testing after they scrape the worst part of the toxicity away. So now we are starting to take that soil and distribute it in Altadena, working with different property owners and parks to take reparation on. So digging up outmoded things that no longer serve us, and rethinking the basins like the Pacific Ocean, and having these ideas of reciprocal memory. The forests of Topanga are fed by the Pacific Ocean, and that commons of the Pacific and the commons of the forest are in a relationship with all of us that live here, as well as the major flora and fauna that need to move freely within these systems. So that gets us to the climate resilience petition. Here we have nearly 7,000 signatures that we will present on May 22nd to the LA City Council. We've discovered that it's the City Council, the LA County Council that is the most available for artist, private citizen, solution-based work. State of California is a little bit slow. We're not giving up on them. And the city is also slow, but the county is getting on board. And we brought this banner for its first public outing tonight to share. And I wanted to end my talk with another video that talks about the climate resilience petition and who it's really for, which is to make a better world for the indigenous youth who we believe are the best people suited for the work ahead of us. Because I'm afraid the title of this talk, After the Fires or After the Flames, is tremendously optimistic. I think we're living at a moment between the fires and between the flames, and that we need a whole new approach to thinking about how to move forward at this moment. So I'm gonna play this video. It's a 6-minute video, and then hopefully the rest of the climate resilience team will come up on the stage and join me. We just thought that when we turn in the petition that we should do something analog instead of hand in a digital petition, and also to actually have the presence of all of the names that signed the petition honored by doing a transfer of their names onto a sheet. And we brought in a coyote and a red-tailed hawk to sort of transform the energy of the state of California. And we're acknowledging Tavangar, which is the name of this place. So the climate resilience petition, Tavangar, and then the signatures. This will be what we'll hand in on May 22nd, and you are all invited to join us. We will meet at Yama Village, and we'll describe that a little bit more to have a whole day of procession around the climate resilience petition. Thank you.
Marcos Aguilar. My name is Marcos Aguilar. I'm an executive director of Semillas Sociedad Civil, and through Semillas we founded Anahuacalmeca. Anahuacalmeca is a kinder to 12th grade indigenous peoples school that was founded in 2002 with the blessings of Chief Yana Vera Rocha, who is Gabrielle's grandmother. under the teachings of them. I guess I've been an educator for almost 40 years now. When we came to UCLA in 1988, we found a university at war with itself, with an activism facing Reaganomics, Pete Wilson. California was an English-only state, and here we are in 2025 with an English-only country. So times have changed, and struggle is still needed. Our school was founded with the vision of indigenous education, and just asking ourselves as young people, when we were young, what would it take for UCLA to offer us the classes that we wanted in Chicana and Chicano studies? What would it take to learn Nahuatl, to learn Zapoteco, to learn Mayan languages at UCLA? And we found out that it took 5 years of community organizing. And it took 100 students taking over the faculty center at UCLA, being arrested and charged with felony vandalism. And it took 2 weeks more of thousands of people occupying the UCLA campus. And then it took 2 more weeks of a hunger strike, that I was one of the hunger strikers, that we organized from inside the jail. As soon as we got out, we began to move in that way. Cesar Chavez had just died. And while we were burying him in Delano, Chancellor Young declared that there would be a Chicana and Chicano Studies department over his dead body. Today, our vision of Chicana and Chicano Studies is so much broader, so much deeper, so much more inspired. And I have to say honestly that I continue to be inspired by the thinking and the actions that we learn from in Metabolic Studio and by Lauren Bonner. I'd like to have another round of applause for Lauren and that work and the team at Metabolic Studio. Those are the visions that Vera Rocha carried, that Manuel Rocha carried when we'd go to protest the nukes in the Mojave Desert, or that our teachers in Danza Azteca carried when we talked about what it felt like to have to leave Mexico and to join the Justice for Janitors movements in Century City. That's the spirit that we carry as an international one. And we recognize Los Angeles as a global capital of the world. And our children should not only be aspiring to become its laborers, but we also are not interested in only becoming its professional class. And so we live in this area of education that questions why schooling must be the white man's last burden around the world. That questions why schooling today continues to serve as the main apparatus of linguicide, of indigenous languages, of ecocide. The largest landowner in the city of Los Angeles is LA Unified School District. And it routinely administratively exempts itself of CEQA requirements for tribal consultation, of CEQA at all. Why must education, when it's something that our community values so highly, ser educado, must it be kept away from us? Lest we lose our language, lest we lose ourselves, lest we lose our spirit. And so today, what I can tell you about Anahuacalmecac is that we are connected to the Chinampas in Xochimilco. We are connected to the highlands in the Rio Altos Balsas. We are connected to the city streets in Mexico City. We are connected to the highlands in Oaxaca. We are connected to the highlands in Guatemala. And we are connected to the highlands here with Chief Yana Vera Rocha Learning Center, becoming a space of imagination, where I like to tell my parents, and this is a conditioning process, because sometimes education is just conditioning. Or we think, yo quiero que sus hijos lleguen a casa sucios, sudosos, y sonrientes. I want your kids to get home dirty, sweaty, and smiling. Because our vision of education, well, at least mine, I'm still working on the rest of our educational team, is that we need to de-urbanize. The most important thing indigenous children can learn growing up in the city is to touch the earth, is to feel what it looks like and feels like, to understand that all around us, our guardians are still here. And I'm so proud and humbled to think that with the guidance of so many people, Minnie Ferguson, our co-founder, was my college sweetheart, and continue to her work as a professional urban planner and as an educator, and so many young scientists like Ari Amaya and professors at UCLA that are now working with us, students here at USC as well, that we're able to reimagine a space in Chief Yana Vera Rocha Learning Center that is now calling back the deer. Because even though we're facing extinction events in our very near future, and even though this climate crisis is not going to be solved by one nonprofit or another, we can still call back that nature. We can still call back those guardians. And so today we see deer. Today we see bobcats. We see other forms of life. And there's this beautiful story that we found doing some research with Gabrielle and others at the Smithsonian in one of the projects that we lead with the Gabrielino Language Intergenerational Project. We're the only school that teaches an indigenous language, by the way, for college preparatory credit, south of Fresno, in the state of California. And we teach Nahuatl and we teach Gabrielino, just starting there. And so there's this story that one of the elders told the researchers in the 30s. He was one of the last Gabrielino fluent speakers, apparently, by the records. He said that there was a time when the devil came to steal a child from the house, a key. And nobody was there to protect him, but the gopher saw. And gopher then did what gopher could do by distracting the devil and allowing the child to run away. That's what I feel our school is. Our school is a distraction, maybe only for a couple hundred students. We've graduated students from high school, transitional kinder to 12th grade since 2012. My last group of students, we had one student admitted to Caltech, 4 students admitted to Stanford. And I'm here to remind you today that as we're meeting right now, our Minnie and other educational leaders in our group are meeting with our allies from across the state to call attention to the fact that Stanford is filing federal felony charges against 12 students in Stanford for leading protests there last summer. That's unconscionable. We cannot allow dissent to be criminalized in California. This isn't Arizona, this isn't Miami, this isn't North Dakota. So anything all of us can do to help defend those students, we'll be calling on that too, because this is important for us as indigenous peoples, as indigenous youth, as indigenous educators, that we stand together facing these horrors and as a part of a worldwide community. But with all respect to Chief Vera Rocha's memory, I want to return the mic to Gabrielle Rocha and thank her for all of your inspiration all these years. Thank you so much.
Miha, Hobbit Hamet, Natwandane Gabrielle Crow. So thank you, Marcos, for making me go after you. It's always very inspiring, and I feel like our relationship is so reciprocal because you learned so much from my grandmother, and I continue to learn through you in this process. And I just feel like we've been able to benefit so much over the last, few years of reconnecting, but I'm just so excited about what the future holds for our organizations working together. And so I'm going to start. So thank you. As I introduced myself in my ancestral language, what I said to you was, hello, good day everyone. My name is Gabrielle Crow. I am the co-chair as well as the Secretary of Environmental Sciences for the Gabrielino Shoshone Nation. I'm also a longtime environmental educator, and I actually, it was kind of interesting to go from teaching UCLA students earlier today to now we're here at USC, so I'm just going all over LA campuses today. So I thank you, Marcos, for what you spoke about. I also want to thank everybody who has already made these beautiful presentations today. I also really appreciate seeing the connection to one of my ancestral islands. I know everyone knows it as Catalina Island, but to us its true name is Mona. I've had the pleasure of being able to teach on that island, not only as a science professional, but now also taking students back and talking about cultural history of the island, so it's been very special. So today I'm just going to talk about the 4 R's. I think a lot of times people hear of the 3 R's, but we've added an extra one for extra emphasis. And so it's recognition, respect, responsibility, and reciprocity. So we can go ahead. Let me see if it, there we go. So when Marcos was talking about my grandmother, Vera Rocha, this is a picture that's actually her. Very significant in the fact that she's actually holding a white sage plant. I was talking with students earlier today about cultural significance and also from an ecological standpoint, how significant white sage is to us. And this picture was actually taken at the North Etiwanda Preserve, but actually before it actually was preserved land. And my grandmother fought in order to protect that land from development. Now, in the other picture, that is actually a historical painting of what the Ballona wetlands looked like before. So I know that Lauren was talking about the Ballona wetlands. I'm sorry if it's kind of, I'm just looking at the smaller version of it. But it's basically talking about, or showing you what the floodplains looked like in Los Angeles prior to development in the area, before rivers were channelized, before all the development happened. And Ballona wetlands is actually very culturally significant, but the fact that it's the actual last coastal wetlands in Los Angeles is very significant as well. So I wouldn't be speaking here today if it wasn't for the strength and resilience and survival of my ancestors and those knowledge and those teachings that they carried on in the fight through genocide, not only actual genocide, but cultural, spiritual, and land theft genocide. And so this is another depiction of that the photo turned into a mural. It's in San Pedro, if you've ever been to that spot before. And the other picture is actually a picture of my family building a key that was on display at the Natural History Museum about 35 years ago. So the significance of it is I'll show in further pictures. There's also a picture of my dad just a few months ago reconstructing another one. But he's actually older now than my grandpa was in that photo that was taken by the Natural History Museum. So my grandparents established a Spirit of Sage Council, but they also went toe-to-toe against Steven Spielberg to prevent more development on the Ballona wetlands. So when I say that I come from a long line of environmental badasses, it's pretty true. So obviously, we're here talking about fires in general. We're also, talking about the fires that hit so close to home in Los Angeles. And we are trying to create a better path forward when it comes to the rebuild process. When we're talking about climate resilient LA, we're trying to create these systems for everyone that lives in these communities so that when we face these disasters that we are going to continue to face because of climate change, because of overdevelopment, because of all of these different things that have happened because we live in modern day Los Angeles, we need to be connecting with our communities, but we need to empower our communities to basically have that strength and those frameworks to be able to do something in this process. The beautiful thing, but also kind of a crazy thing that happened with all these fires is we saw all of those community connections and all the community support from one another, but we also saw that those systems that are supposed to be in place with the government and the infrastructure weren't there in a time when people really needed it. We need to be making sure that we have a climate resiliency hub in different areas of Los Angeles so that people know where they can take classes and be certified to be able to take care of emergencies that will happen in the future. And we need to just be able to have a space that in these unknown times of the current politics and also facing the climate crisis, that people just are able to have a place to actually go for that community connection and go to strengthen themselves. So this is a picture of my 3 kids actually at Yana Village, overlooking the hillside. And it's talking about that path forward. For me, as an Indigenous person, we think about the next 7 generations. And so for us, everything that we're doing, I'm not only doing for my kids, but their kids and all those generations that are coming up after that. And the work that we're doing, we have to think of it in the context of we are building our own ancestral continuum. Like I said before at the beginning of this, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the strength and resilience of my ancestors, but I also think about the future generations that I don't want them to have as difficult of a time dealing with this climate crisis that we've been left with in modern times in the future. And so the things that we're doing, even if it's small changes here and there can really have a butterfly effect on what's going to happen in the future if all of us get on board in the community and in this struggle to be able to work together for a brighter future. So, since I talked a little bit, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about just some of the pictures about creating those native science systems using traditional knowledge. You know, it's been a very interesting thing to be trained as a Western scientist and work in the field as a Western scientist, but now seeing that shift and that transition for people really trying to seek out the original knowledge keepers in these sciences. You know, for me, I hold a lot of respect for those that have such an interest in the environment and science that they decide to go to school for so long and make their career path out of it. But I also think that the knowledge keepers also need to be in those conversations and at the forefront of these decisions, not only with the rebuild of what happened after the fires, but also in these processes that are going to happen to make sure that these disasters don't occur like that again. And so, like I said before, I said that I shared a picture. That's my dad and my Uncle Nick, who's also the chair of the Gabrielina Shoshone Nation in that center pic on top. That's myself when we went to go gather tule for our key. But these things that we're being taught now in real time are because of the removal of that keystone species from those environments. There has been that overdevelopment. It's been a very big struggle to be able to actually build our first traditional house on our lands because the tule that was here and plentiful hundreds of years ago no longer exists in Los Angeles County. Most of the tule that we source from Los Angeles County came from a fake pond that was at the La Brea tar pits, and that's where we were able to gather some tule. We were also able to work on some relationships with California state parks to be able to try and go and gather tule in Newport Beach, which turned out to kind of be a disaster because not only did I have to sign a permit and say that I was going to kind of have like an extractive kind of conversation with whoever walked by in the public to talk about what it was that we were doing and what the purpose was behind it. There actually wasn't very much tule there in the first place. So the powers that we think of when we're thinking about these knowledge bearers and these systems or these people that are working as professionals in some of these places are also not aware of the cultural significance of the plants here and also the fact that they don't even know how much is actually there in those spaces. So we were lucky enough to partner with UC Irvine to be able to go and gather more, but being also respectful of basic birding nesting habitat, we had to only gather at a certain point. So lucky for us in the fact that we were able to be spared from being that close to the fires, but we were not spared from the 100-mile-per-hour winds. And so these pictures are taken of the key right before the winds happen, and then we have some other more devastating pictures of what happened afterwards. But in that process, we are learning and we're growing. When we actually worked on the construction of the key, we not only used more traditional methods to actually be able to measure the willow poles, we also used a drone and flew it over to make sure that we were actually making it even while we did it. So it's combining those modern knowledge systems with the traditional knowledge systems in order to create a better path forward for everyone. And so I think this is, you're at the next one. So thank you very much, everyone.
It's been really beautiful. It's been really beautiful to listen to folks, to always listen to this team. My name is Patrice Colors, and I have both an art practice, but also a community practice, and both of those feel really integral to my value system. So I was displaced from the fires for about 6 weeks, and whenever I experience a set of trauma, I create a campaign. And I called Lauren, who has a similar vibration as me, and I was like, we need to do something. I sat and watched this place burned. I have 4 generations from Los Angeles. It's all I know. It's all my child will probably know. And I was very, very, very disturbed and deeply disappointed at our elected and appointed officials. It was really clear that they did not know what they were doing. And as Lauren and I gathered together, she was like, we actually really need to go to, and be in direct conversation with the community I've been building with Marcos brought in Gabrielle, and we've been in this conversation over the last several months around what does it look like to call Los Angeles in to a deeper conversation about its necessity to not just talk about Indigenous people and talk about land acknowledgements, but actually bring in a real conversation around traditional ecological knowledge, around land back. What would it look like if the original stewards of this land were a part of every single conversation, had the power to actually co-govern alongside this county, the city, the state. And I haven't been able to look at this place the same ever since. And so I think part of the conversation I want to bring to each of you in this moment is we need you to join. We need you to join us in challenging and shifting and pushing this city, this county, to do something different. Fires are coming back. They are. We saw the worst of it, maybe, but we get to do something different. We do not have to live like this. We get to respond differently, be in it differently. That to me is the role of the artist, is to reimagine what's possible, reimagine our potential as a place, as a space, and to do it in community with the people that have been doing it here for thousands of years. We truly are only in the position that we're in because of colonization. And so what is our duty to challenge that? And so I think for me as a Black woman, there's been a long history of Black and Indigenous solidarity throughout time. There's been a long history of our communities coming together for repair, coming together to have these conversations and actually creating new space, new ventures that call in this entire community here in Los Angeles. And so I really just want to offer each of you an opportunity to be reminded what it was like those weeks as we witnessed this place burn. How did that impact you? How did it impact your community? In some ways, the news has sort of stopped talking about it, right? In fact, it's become more of a political mess that we all have to witness. I'm uninterested in the elected officials' political mess of it all. People's lives were lost, homes were destroyed, everything taken from them in a matter of hours. And our only response is to rush a rebuild. That's irresponsible. And so when elected officials, this is how I work, when elected officials are irresponsible, I usually am like, okay, let's find the adults in the room. We are the adults, and we get to say, we get to do something different. And so this coalition of us, where we come in our own paths, it's important every time we present, we share the work that we're doing individually and how we're coming together. And we're asking each of you to join us. And you all are really stale right now. This is when you say, yes, I will join. I know we're in like a weird auditorium. It doesn't feel like a protest or a rally, but I know you have it in you. And we need you to save the date for May 22nd. We're meeting at Chifia'ana Village on May 22nd at 10 a.m. We're going to have a day-long gathering, both of presenting this petition to our local electeds, and then for the ones who didn't show up, we're going to process to them. And we're going to present this petition to them, because they are also a part of this community. It is also up to them to join in on this road, this different journey. And it's, I think for me and for us, it starts with imagining something completely different than what exists right now. And how do we do that? And not just individually, how do we do it collectively? Thank you so much.
Sometimes the response to the crisis is a crisis, right? And this is what Patrice was saying, that we artists come in to break through that stagnation and normality to say it's time for a change, and that change has to be the position of the trickster, the creator, the uncertain, the unknowable, and that's the space that we're inviting you to join us in on May 22nd.